Okay, my YouTube people, these are the adjustments that you have to make when you have to adjust the primary chain. Once it is you adjust the primary chain, you also have to adjust the main drive chain, you have to adjust the clutch, you have to adjust the shifter, and you have to adjust the mechanical rear brakes. So stick around and see what that looks like. Per the factory manual, both chains should have a 1/2 inch of free play up and down, and they say to rotate them around to check them at the tightest point. Now the primary chain's brand new on this motorcycle, so it's not an issue. The book's clear that the main drive chain wears a lot faster than the primary chain, so it'll need more adjustment. You have to remember on this bike that the drive chain can be a lot tighter because there is no swing arm. If you have a swing arm on a motorcycle, as it moves through the travel, the chain will tighten and loosen, and that's not the case on this. I just get a ruler. So right there, the tape measure is sitting at 1.5 inches. I push it up and it's about 1 inch there. So that's about a 1/2 inch of travel. Now if I really want to force it, I could get a little more. I'm going to call that good. Now I'm going to adjust the drive chain. You can see it's really loose at this point. So I'll back the rear wheel up and get it set. It's pretty standard. You just turn these adjusters in on both sides until you get about a 1/2 inch of deflection in the chain. At this point I have to make sure that this is all loose. Now if that's loose, I'm just going to pull the rim back and give it a big adjustment at once. Now snug this up with my fingers and check it. It's still plenty loose. So now that I have the chain adjusted right, that's quite a bit more than 1/2 inch there, but if you spin this, it gets a little tighter there, and then right there it kind of gets a good bit tighter. So I'm going to leave it there. You're better off having your chains on the loose side rather than the tight. If they're loose, they'll whip and wear. But if they're... I'm just going to tighten the jam nut. Now I'll tighten it on the other side. Now I'm going to tighten the nut. This is just to hold the brake backing plate on. This does not tighten down on the bearings in the wheel at all. So you want to tighten this up pretty good. Now I'll put the lock on. I already cleaned the axle threads, so I'll put some Loctite on them. This is a 7/8 nut. The factory manual does not call out a torque spec, so I'm going to torque it to 55 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to connect the brakes up and make sure they're adjusted properly. Now I'm going to connect the brake rod and make sure it's adjusted properly. Already I can see it's not because the brake's all the way up. I'll have to loosen this jam nut and turn the rod out. To get the jam nut loose, I got a 1/2 inch wrench. I'm going to grab it here with an adjustable so it doesn't spin. Back this out to where I think it should be. Now the way I do this is I put the pin in it like that. Now I push on the brake pedal. See how far it depresses? That's pretty good for me. I'm going to leave it there. Now I put the washer back on and put the cotter pin back in. Just give it a little bend to hold it all in. Now tighten up the jam nut. That's all good. Give it one more test. Feels pretty good. I'll ride it, and if I think it needs to be tightened more, I'll just take it back apart and tighten it a little more. Now I'm going to tighten the bolt for the chain guard. That has a lock washer on it. Now that's good and tight. I'm going to install the shifter rod. This end takes a washer and a cotter pin, but I've never put it in there, and I've never had the rod pop out for whatever reason. This rod goes into the shifter arm that's on the top of the lid. The best way to do this is to put it in the first gear on the shifter gate and to put the transmission in the first gear. And you can see that that doesn't line up at all. And that's because I put a new chain on and had to move the transmission up because the chain hasn't stretched yet. So I have to shorten this rod up about a 1/2 inch. So this piece up here has 2 flats and it takes a 3/8 wrench. And this one's 1/2 inch. And then take this and turn it in the amount I want. So now I'm going to tighten the front of the rod up. It's a 1/2 inch on both the bolt head and the nut. And I do have Loctite on this along with the lock washer. Has a spring washer on it, so it doesn't get super tight. You got to leave it a little loose so everything's nice and free. I have the adjustment right here. Even in the past, I've never had to run a washer or cotter pin, but it seems like I do now. Used to just stick in there and hold in there, but not really anymore, so I'll just put that in. Not a big deal. And I'm going to cut it off a little bit. Just doesn't need to be quite this long. So now it won't be coming out. Now I have that cotter pin cut down. Rod stays in nice. Over here I got it adjusted. I don't have the jam nut. And what you want to do at this point is just, you want to test it going both directions to make sure all the gates are in the proper position. I have it in 4th gear, and I'm just going to rotate the rear tire. There's 3rd, it's right on the gate, it's perfect adjustment. There's 2nd, and there's 1st. And you want there to be a little extra push on 1st. It seems like the best way I found to do this is adjust it in 1st gear. So going back the other way, there's neutral, there's 2nd, there's 3rd, and there's 4th. So that's the adjustment on the tank shifter. Now I'm going to put the clutch rod in. That clutch rod goes from the back of the foot clutch pedal over to the clutch rod. You see here there's a flat on that rod and then a ball end. See the ball end has a place for a straight screwdriver. You just stick the flat spot in and you pull it forward. So you can see right here is where it has to go on, and it's a good inch short there. And then when you go forward, that pulls it in, and then you push down and that lets it out. It's toe to go. So I'm going to lengthen this right here. So in order to do this, I broke the jam nut, and I just turned the rod end out to where it's supposed to go. I'm going to take it out a good bit here. Oh, it's already at the end. Alright, I may be able to loosen this nut and move the rod further back so that it can grab a hold of it, bring it back to here, and then it goes forward. I'll take a look at that and see what that looks like. I finally got the clutch arm on. I ended up just having to readjust the clutch so that the arm that comes across moved a little further towards the front of the motorcycle. And then I also lengthened this arm a little bit, and now you can see it works perfect. Right here is the difference between foot clutch and suicide clutch. With foot clutch, you can press on the rear and that disengages the clutch. And you could just sit at a light in gear with your foot off of this, just like it is now, and not go forward. Then you push the front down, which is toe to go. It engages the clutch, and then you take off and move forward. Like I said, you can release the clutch or disengage it by pushing on the rear and just sit there in gear with your foot off. That's what foot clutch is. With suicide clutch, the minute you let off the clutch, the springs engage it and you go forward if you're in gear. So with suicide, you can't take your foot off the clutch, and that's what makes it suicide. If you're sitting at a red light and crossing traffic, you lean to the left and put your foot down. If you're in gear, you're going forward. So that's the 5 adjustments you have to make on one of these old bikes where they have tin primaries. You adjust the primary chain, then you adjust the main drive chain, then you adjust the mechanical rear brake, then you have to adjust the tank shifter and the clutch rod. When this chain wears, you have to loosen the 5 nuts on the transmission, move it back, and then readjust those 5 different points on this. So you can see these older bikes require a lot of maintenance. I hope this helps. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I always read them and I answer them as quickly as I can. And thanks for watching.